as they pop up, and then guys, I'll walk around and do this.
Hello. Jenna Cash.
Yeah, fine. We'll start with the little Q&A then.
Yeah, so let's do a little Q&A. When we originally came up with this idea for Talk to Me Johnny Live, we wanted it to be interactive. So Luke's over there on his computer, getting people in, like emailing in questions. In typical Luke fashion, oh yeah, no problem. Massive problems. So the idea was that we were going to have this kind of Talk to Me Johnny interactive deal where people could ask questions and we were going to answer the questions, and then that thing went to shit. So we wanted to get up and kind of do a reboot a little bit. Now I get to sit with Andy and really just answer anything that you guys want to hear. Any Q&A, really, if anything's off bounds, I guess we'll say so. But I'm pretty cool to answer anything, so.
Into the mic, please, Andy.
Oh, that's because you kill people. For a living.
No. I'm retired.
Yeah, you're retired.
This is Callie.
Get out of my face. Is this on? So I'm going to start with kind of a cliche, cheesy question. And Andy, this is mostly for you, but I'm curious as to how you've seen your own personal leadership style evolve over time. Like, what would you do differently than maybe 10 years ago?
So nothing that I covered was created by me. I'd be the first person to admit that I'm probably on the shallow end of the IQ pool of almost any room that I go into.
It's true. It's very true.
But what I did, it's interesting. I do speak often and all the time, like, oh, we want to hear about war stories. And my thing is, no, I'm not going to give you a single one. The only stories I'll give you is me making catastrophic mistakes. And I'll talk about the amazing things that I saw other people do. But I'm not the war story guy.
Which sucks, because he actually has some really good stories that unfortunately he's only told me after like 2 or 3 or even 10 drinks. So.
Okay, I digress. So that book that I read from, I have like 10 of those from my time in the military. I just wrote down stuff that I saw that worked. What I wish I would have done earlier in my career is realize that I needed to start thinking like a leader. Because in the military, it's crazy rank oriented. Even in the SEAL teams where we're on a first name basis, there's rank, there's how long you've been in a team. There's always a reason to just be like, shut up. And to a degree, we do that to people to mess with them. It's a very harsh environment because we want them to be resilient, between their ears. But I do wish that I understood the concept of thinking like a leader, but I didn't do it myself early enough. And I really didn't understand the gravity of truly being in a leadership position until my last deployment. I did 12 years as an enlisted guy and 5 as an officer. And the deployment I did as an officer, I was in charge of a small group of people comparatively to like a lot of businesses, like 16 people. And I aged in dog years. It was the most taxing 10 months of my life because all I could I was terrified somebody was going to get hurt or killed because of a decision that I made. And I just wish I would have always had that feeling of gravity before then. I mean, that was the change that I saw. I understood the concepts, but it really hit home for me when I actually was put into a position of leadership and had to, it's easy to sit up there and be like, yeah, be accountable. Well, it's a little bit harder when you have to stand up and be accountable instead of just talking about it. That is all I have.
That's good. I mean, what was interesting for me, coming from playing in the NFL, leadership is kind of a really strange thing because I actually came up with this quote line pretty early in my NFL career: "In the absence of true leadership, false prophets appear." And what would happen is you get into a team and everybody's rah-rah, you're there, you're getting paid. Coaches are supposed to be your leaders, but unfortunately a lot of coaches are scared to death that they're going to lose their job, so it's just kind of crappy leadership. So what happens is in the absence of true leadership, like people turn into these prophets, like telling stories or like this is going to happen instead of being like, hey, this is what we're going to do. Everybody's going to work hard, you're going to study, you're going to work, and we're going to go out and execute the game plan. And if something bad goes wrong, we're not going to be caught off guard. And like the best part is, nothing ever goes to plan. I mean, you go out, you have a game plan, everything's great, and then all of a sudden, somebody hangs 21 points on you on a block punt and a long pass, and you're down in the hole. And next thing you know, it's like the water boy where the coach is hiding in the back, and players are like pointing fingers at each other, and guys are fighting, and you're like, I would never want to be in a foxhole with any of you people if somebody threw a hand grenade. And like that to me was really taught me a lot about leadership, is being around really crappy leaders or people that had no idea what they were doing, that just somehow got this position in this job because they either knew somebody or I cut film for this guy. And there's a lot of strange, like as you guys know in the NFL, like whoever you worked for before, when they get a job, they hire all their people. So like, oh, I was a ball boy, and next thing you know, I'm head coach of the San Francisco 49ers 5 years later. And you're like, how did that happen? Well, I happen to know a guy, so I'm naked in the shower, and next thing you know, I got this head job. But it was really interesting. And then I played with guys who were incredible leaders. But the guys that were incredible leaders didn't have to say much. They were the guys that showed up early. They worked hard. They did all the little things. And I realized that leadership was more about doing all the little things right, because nothing erodes leadership faster than hypocrisy. Like you see the guy, it's like, hey, you need to do this. And you're like, well, wait a minute, why do I need to do this when you don't do this? Well, don't ask me about me. This is what you need to do. And that stuff absolutely drove me crazy. So for me, especially in like a pregame situation when guys are getting ready to go out there, it kind of always made me laugh. It's like I was never nervous or worried in my kind of role as kind of a leader, because I always looked at it like, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to bust people's ass. I'm going to do what I can, and people need to catch up. But you get out in a situation where you're getting ready to go out and you're looking at these guys out there screaming and yelling and beating their chests, and those of you guys that are fighters, you're never worried about that guy. You can ask Andy. It's like, yeah, I'm never worried about the guy that's over there pumping himself up. I'm always nervous of the dude that's over there sleeping before you go to the game, because that's the killer. That's the guy that's so comfortable in what he's about to do. And I played with a guy, Will Shields, 14-year All-Pro, one of the best to probably ever play the game, and that guy literally slept before every game. And I'm watching guys over there chewing glass, putting their head through their lockers, trying to pump themselves up, almost talk themselves into doing this job. And this dude's over there sleeping, and you like wake him up. You're like, yeah, it's no problem. I'm gonna go out here, and I've started 237 straight games. I'm gonna go out here in automatic, and and then seeing that
inspiration versus
yeah.
Pushing. In my own experience, just to double tap on what you said, it's way easier for me to point out bad leadership than good. Because badly, you're like, oh my God, that guy's an asshole. But I look back at some of the best leaders that I have ever worked with, and it took me a long time. I'm like, how in the hell does he do that? Like, what is it about him? Because they're quiet. They're not saying anything. They're inspiring. Like I was saying, like, you got to pull people along by doing the right thing. And it's hard to spot that in a sea of people acting like assholes.
Yeah. I mean,
Shit. Is this really necessary? Okay.
Awkward.
I know. Can I at least look at you?
It's only weird if you make eye contact, right?
It's like,
I was about to make that joke too.
God damn it.
So just curious as to, like, if you think that evolution of like your leadership style, was it stress inoculation? That's kind of like what it sounds like. I mean, you don't, as a leader, you expose yourself to what's necessary, and you're dealing with like maybe a different tier of consequences versus what you have, not to micromanage people, but you've got them doing things, you've got your own stressors going on. But was it stress inoculation that really drove you to reach, those different processes within your own leadership style?
I think it was just time in the saddle.
Yeah.
But that starts with when you say, hey, I'm in the saddle. So that could be today. That growth process starts when you put a pin in the ground and you're like, okay, I'm a fucking leader. I'm going to act like it from this day forward. And
I mean, but is that really something that, you consciously make the decision like, hey, I'm a fuck up follower. I'm this, I'm just going to follow everybody through the herd. And then one day you decide like, no, you know what? It's not going to work. I'm going to put it in there. I mean,
I think it's dependent on the person. You should be able to go and look in the mirror objectively and determine which one of those people you are.
Well, isn't it almost, like I heard somebody make a comment, and unfortunately it was on Facebook, which I'm kind of embarrassed to say I heard it there. But this guy asked, where are all of our great leaders? And like I thought that was...
Not on Facebook.
Well, exactly. But somebody made that comment, and I was so tempted to comment on it, but then I have to enter into some weird, mental battle with people that I think are, obviously not playing with the full deck. But as I reflected on that statement, I realized it's not really, there's great leaders everywhere, but the reason that we remember our great leaders is because it's trying times. It's the idea, and I made a comment yesterday, strength is born out of adversity. So all of a sudden they're like, oh, where's our Abe Lincolns? I'm like, well, we don't have a Civil War yet. Where's our, George Washington revolutionaries? Where's the Thomas Jeffersons? Where's these people? I'm like, look at this, the times, and the great people were in a position to step up and present themselves to be great. They also lived a couple hundred years ago, so we don't really know with inaccuracy. But I mean, for Andy's situation, and especially for his deal with leadership, the guys that he had seen be the best leaders were probably in the worst situation. I know he's not a war story guy, but hearing some of the things like when they were in like Fallujah and other places, or some of the other things that Andy was involved in, hearing his talk about leadership and the people that that guys were willing to follow into these hellish situations. I mean, they were the dudes that weren't in the back. They're like, hey, I'll see you down the street. No, they were the guys that are like, let's fucking go. We're going down the street. You guys are coming with me. And you're like, let's do it.
Yeah, and rank's not going to get you like, hey, go charge that machine gun nest. I'm like, okay, wait till he goes around the corner. I'm not going anywhere. Like, rank doesn't get you to do anything in a combat environment. It's because they've earned your trust. And to be a leader in a trying time, you have to prep yourself. Yeah. Don't wait for the trying time. You got to put the pin in the ground at some point. And my response to the guys like, hey, where's all our great leaders? Like, fuck you. Stop asking about where the great leaders are. Why don't you go become one?
Yeah. And that's what, Andy's talk, and actually my talk on Sundays about, the idea of social responsibility. And the irony of it is I'm sitting there listening to Andy talk, and I'm like, God damn it. He stole like 3 of my points.
That's what I'm talking about. Be the change you want to see, people.
It's the name of my talk, Be the Change, this motherfucker. But it's interesting that that's why I'm going to slice your tires.
I didn't slide that in when I was talking, so I had to get it in now.
But I mean, that's what it comes down to. Like, I think people are so expecting somebody to do something for them, and you can't. Like, if you're waiting for somebody to come save you, and I made that point years ago on my Talk to Me Johnny blog, was like, dude, if you're waiting for somebody to like save you, pull you around the corner, and like, here's what you need to do, I got you, you're fucked. Like you have to reach out, hunt things down. I mean, we've had many people since we've been doing this literally hunt us down. We just had one recently, and the guy literally was like hitting us up, came out, and was like, this was important to me, so I got on a plane. I came see you guys, and I needed to have this conversation. And like, to me, that was like he wanted to be the change. He was willing to go through and go out and make it happen. I remember. Andy invites me to his commissioning when he got commissioned from enlisted guy to an ensign, and it was epic. Like, I was so proud that he invited my brothers and I and Steve-O, and we go out there, and like, here's somebody that I've helped and it's helped me in a lot of ways, and now here's the deal where now he gets to go out, and for once, I'm sure as an enlisted guy, you're like, fuck these guys. If one day when I'm going to be in charge, or if I was in charge, now all of a sudden he's in a situation where he gets to be in charge, and he's dead ass honest where. These are situations, and I mean, unfortunately, I got to play in the NFL, which was a cool job, but not nearly as cool as what these guys get to do. And
I would not describe it as cool. See, again, movies. It's not Black Hawk Down. It's not Saving Private Ryan.
Yeah, but you get to blow shit up.
We can go pay money to blow shit up.
Dude, I got to blow shit up, and it was a lot of fun. So, okay, cool. Any other questions about leadership? Yeah, DD.
First time caller.
Thank you.
Okay, no problem. Nothing stresses me out more than my kids, and that stress inoculation that Callie talked about. How has your leadership style or techniques changed being a dad?
Okay, so I'm relatively certain I'm raising some serial killers, just to throw that out there. I have my oldest son. They're both going to be serial killers, but they're very different. My oldest son is not going to get caught, and he's going to have heads in jars. My youngest son will have heads in jars, but he's going to blog about it because he's a retard. But if you want to practice leadership, there's no better place than parenting, because up until a certain age, the accountability is 100% on your shoulders. You see kids doing stuff your kids doing stuff that you don't like. Where do you think they learned it from?
I learned it from watching you, Dad.
Oh yeah, it's fun. My 13-year-old said that to me one time. It's pretty awesome.
Is Riley 13?
Yeah, he's 13 now.
Wow. That's
I'll be
crazy.
dead
I've known you. Yeah, well, me too.
Yeah, I'll be dead soon. 2 types of leadership, good and bad. What's the difference in leadership in a family, in a business, in a sporting environment? I mean, there is no difference in the principles. You want to practice keeping control of your emotions? Have a house full of kids driving you nuts, making noise, all the stuff you don't want to hear at the end of the day. all of those principles, I feel fortunate that I'm not a perfect parent by any stretch of the imagination, believe me, but I feel fortunate with those principles because I think that it does help me. And I use the exact same principles with my kids. Like, we have talks about accountability and responsibility, and like, well, she said this. Okay, why'd you hit her? Because she did this. I'm like, okay, stop. She's responsible for that. You're responsible for what you like. And that, though, like, I refuse to have little shits for kids. Like, my whole goal in life is to raise responsible, contributing members to society. And you do that by teaching them those leadership principles. Teaching them isn't hard. Reinforcing them is what'll grind you to dust.
And staying consistent. That's the one thing I realized. I have 2 5-year-old daughters and I have an 8-month-old son. And if anybody wants a lesson in, I don't even know what it is, patience, have 2 twin daughters. They like the consistency factor of, like, you have to set a message and then consistently follow that. And the problem is like with my one daughter who likes to curse, she totally got it from me. Driving in the car, we got cut off, and I was like, fuck. Sure enough, 2 days later, driving to school, somebody cuts me off, and I look in the rearview mirror, and she goes, fuck. And,
which, in my mind, that's strong. Like, the rule with my kids is, like, complete sentence, you're good to go. But don't make some bullshit up. Like, it needs to make sense. Like, if you get pissed, you go, you motherfucker. Like, all right, cool. But don't be like, son of a bitch, dumbass. Like, no, like, it's got to be good in a flowing sentence. Like, it's fine.
So...
Now, here's one thing that, like, with the accountability. This is a tough one, and I saw this a ton with leaders that I was working for. They would mess up, and they would try to avoid it. Yeah. When I fuck up in front of my kids, or I do something that eats at me, like I react in a way that I didn't want to act or that I shouldn't have acted, I will go to my kids and I'll explain it to them. Like, listen, I'm sorry. I didn't live up to the principles that I'm trying to raise you on. That's totally on me. You deserve better than that. I should be doing better. Like, I'm completely honest with them when I mess up. Like, there's no magic curtain of being a human being at my house. Like, you see the good, bad, and the ugly. And when I mess up, I will go to that person like, hey, that was my bad. I'm sorry. It's tough to do. Accountability is extremely hard.
No, being parenting is challenging.
My question is going back to what you're talking about being calm under fire. I have my own point of view on it, but
is it the same as mine?
Probably. I don't know. Well,
if it's not, it's wrong.
No, as far as a couple of questions, or 2-part question, whatever you want to say. One, do you find there's a certain person that's a little bit better just naturally being cool under fire? And not necessarily men, women, whatever, but do you just find some guys can naturally rise to that? Like, you have that plan, but that's great. You know which way you're supposed to go, but once something starts flying over you, once it goes wrong, you can still get locked in that, parallel, just not moving at all. Yeah. So is there some type of, do you think that, I think personally that certain people are just more natural being calm under fire. They've gotten more stuff thrown at them to where they can handle it better?
Usually third children.
But think about what you're saying, because you're actually loading up an excuse with that. I agree that there is a natural propensity. Some people have more than others. But how do you, that's like, okay, I guess I'm not going to be strong because I don't have a natural propensity for strength. How do you get stronger?
No, true. I totally agree. And you said it a little bit better than I did. I think some people are more natural. I think you can get better at it, and even good people can get better at it. Strong people can get stronger, fast people can get faster.
Though.
Yes.
Tons of time in the saddle.
Now, you're talking about, somebody cuts you off, you kind of curb the emotions and that type of stuff. But without any true, for you, it's easy. Life or death, you gotta step up.
Why do you assume it's easy?
You're in a...
The situation doesn't drive how I act. So don't assume that it's easy, because I've seen plenty of SEAL officers and enlisted guys completely freeze in combat situations. We're not a bunch of unicorns, running around. Like, there's a lot of flaws and imperfections. Those are principles that we aspire to. They don't always get lived up to.
Okay. Well, I wasn't saying it's easier for you, but when it's a life or death situation, it's a little bit clearer to make a decision, whether it's right or wrong. It's clearer to make that decision. It's easier to But when you're sitting down to eat at the table, you can still eat whatever you want, and it's not going to kill you right away. Eating the Big Mac's not going to kill you tomorrow.
You're talking
not
about
making
time.
a decision.
You're talking about time.
Are you talking about the ability to see like the long game versus the short game? Like, oh God, this guy's bleeding. I got to jump on him and put a deal. Opposed from like, now I'm going to eat like 7 packs of Nerds today, and hopefully this isn't going to kill me, even though I'm going to be in a diabetic coma after my 7 Cokes.
Here's what I see in the business world. They think that combat leadership and business leadership is different because of the time. Combat, largely, if you have poor leadership, it'll manifest itself almost immediately. Yeah. People who trade bonds and like these crazy sums of money that scare me a hell of a lot more than people shooting at me, they can make mistakes, but it takes a really long time for it to show itself. So they give them the excuse of like, oh, it's easy for you because it's life and death. It's not. It's no clearer because it's life and death. Just like, a lot of times in combat, you're presented with 2 bad options. Just like when you sit down at the dinner table. The principles are identical. If you choose to give yourself that out and say, hey, well, it's not going to happen to me today, all you're doing is getting momentum in the wrong direction. And it's not easy living up to those principles. I fail at them all the time. But they're universally applicable.
So if you create a set of principles and almost remove the emotion from it, you look at something like, hey, this is, and we talk about this quite often, the idea for power athlete with like a method, like these are the principles at which we aspire to, or more importantly, the ones that to me are rock solid. There's no deviation in these. So as long as people can look, and this was part of my talk, which I'll give you a jump on. Rafael Ruiz, who's was my strength coach and the guy that trained me for a number of years. We were out, having some drinks, and we started talking about the idea of like how people know right from wrong. Was it religion? Was it parents? And how we really went down that deal. Does somebody need to tell you what's right and wrong? Or at this point in your life, do you know that like, hey, I probably shouldn't eat this Big Mac, but like, fuck it, I'm going to do it anyway? Or have you met people that are like, I didn't know a Big Mac was bad? And you're like, well, define bad. Like, if you're starving, is a Big Mac okay? Is a Big Mac every day for every meal for 20 years okay? I mean, I think people have to start having the social responsibility and like the ability to start looking themselves and say, all right, what is right for me? And what are the principles that I aspire to? Andy's principles, for being a Navy SEAL were very concrete, right? Because if they don't follow this, if they don't train, if they don't do what they have, potentially people die. In the NFL, it's fucking like Andy said, all those movies are fake. All the movies you guys see about NFL, that's true. like the movie where the dude's cutting the car in half and all that stuff, any given Sunday, any of that stuff, that's 90% true, right? But like the problem is that when, our deal was that wins and losses, nobody was going to die. Even though, and it always killed me in football situations when they always want to give these like war stories or they start using these war analogies, and I'm like, it's fucking terrible. Like, dude, I'm getting paid exorbitant amounts of sum to go out and push around other dudes in spandex with people watching, getting fucking drunk, eating hot dogs while I fight other dudes in spandex. And we're getting paid money for this. And the thing that tripped me out was we at TV timeouts, I'd stand up there and I would watch fans beat the shit out of each other. Literally fight like fists, like killing each other. And I'm sitting down here and being like, this is insane. And people are like, for the team. And I'm like, it's a fucking game. Like, people don't have perspective. And I think that's the thing that blew my mind. People are like, you hate those guys? I'm like, no, one of my best friends. I just played against them. I wasn't going to give him a sack because I don't want to have to listen to him talk shit to me. But like, I think the problem comes down to is that people don't, and Andy talked about putting a flag in the ground, but people have a compass. And I think for these guys, especially in Andy's situation, is they know what right and wrong is. And they know, what is expected from them, and they have something to live up to. And I think, especially as a parent, all of a sudden when you have these little organisms looking at you, you know exactly what's right and wrong. Is it bad that I, went, fuck, and my daughter started doing it? No, that was a natural reaction, but at the end of the day, I had to explain to her why that was wrong and why daddy did that and how this all fits. And you start working to try to create these people instead of just all of a sudden turning and slapping them and being like, don't say that. Well, that's the hypocrisy, which is probably how a lot of us were raised. I said, fuck. And my mom said, don't fucking say that. And would like go to fucking crack me. And I'd be like, wait a minute, didn't mom just drop the F? Oh, okay, well, I'll get a fresh one. Like, but that nice thing, and like that's really, I think, what Andy talked about, this idea of leadership is establishing a set of principles and ideals that are your compass for north, and what feels good to you, And it might be different for everybody, but at the end of the day, if you're depending on somebody else to tell you right from wrong, and I think that's where people are fucked up. You know, we have a couple simple rules to work for Power Athlete. Don't lie and don't steal. Right? It's simple, right? Don't lie, don't steal, and fucking do your work. I'm not going to micromanage you. I don't micromanage any of these guys. Harry and I were laughing as Andy was talking about micromanaging, because I don't micromanage any of these guys. Like, if I have to micromanage you, you are the wrong person in the wrong situation. And I got to find a situation for you that allows you to be who you are. And if I can't find it, then we can't work together. And I think that's the problem, is that people need to start finding their own situation. And what I took from Andy's deal is that at some point, if you're waiting for somebody to do that for you, you're fucking behind the curve. Be your own leader. Start going into the front. Am I right? Wrong? Pretty accurate?
So this may sink into your talk on social responsibility too, John. If you're working as a subordinate under someone who's a leader, who is potentially maybe exudes some of the qualities or lack of qualities, you would say potentially classify them as a poorer leader, at what point do you decide to go against the call that's being made that may have a better outcome for the group you work with? Or like when do you decide to sort of stop following the orders, for want of a better term?
So there's a military answer to that, and then there's like the business answer to that. If you have more time, the business answer works for both, and you don't. What you do is you make your boss look good, and you explain to your boss the why. People confuse the chain of command as only being down. It needs to be up and down. You can lead up as well. If you set the example in the military, especially in the SEAL teams, say you have a weak boss, and the guys underneath the boss are just crushing it, everybody sees what's going on, and we get rid of the leader, and we find him one that's capable of leading, because that person's holding back the other people. But before we do that, we try to lead up the chain of command. They're making bad calls. We explain to them the why of why that call is bad. You know, if you have a leader that you don't respect, one of the best things to do, just make them look good. Play to their ego. People with big egos are so easy to manipulate. I know exactly what you're going to do every single time. So I can do my job, set the example, make you look good, right? And then the whole team benefits from it. But it's fine. Sometimes you just got to wait. You know what I mean? Do your job, lead up and down. And in combat, I have fired somebody, but it was because I tried to do all of those things. Talk to the guy privately. Hey, man, you need to think about this when you're making decisions, so on and so forth. People's lives are on the line. The guy froze, and I literally was like, dude, I counted to 5. I'm like, you're done. And I took over. I wouldn't recommend doing that in the business world. In the business world, like I said, make the person look good. Play to their ego, and just set the example.
I had a situation with some bad leadership, and I started buying leadership books and gifting them. Like,
that's called passive aggressive.
That is 100% passive aggressive, and I hate passive aggressive. But when they get like 3 or 4 leadership books a week, all of a sudden that doesn't passive. That's like, you fucking suck. Read something, and this is my way of like being able to point that out. And you know, hopefully, as a big thing too, I learned in college fairly early, playing on my college team, is that if you're thin-skinned, especially in a competitive environment, you're not going to survive very long. I had the opportunity, like Andy said, to go down and observe their training, and the analogies, or more importantly, like the perception you might have of Navy SEALs being these like fairly callous, kind of deal, is pretty accurate. I watched some things that. And I like to think I grew up with 2 older brothers, and not in a very kind and gentle way. And there was shit that I was like, I think I'm going to tear up right now. This is terrible. Like, I watched almost 100 kids drowned, and their instructors sitting around trying to drown them. And like 70 of the kids literally tapped out in this thing called the beehive. They basically put all these kids in the pool in their clothes, and the instructors got around and started pushing them to the inside. Just started pushing them in this thing called the beehive. All of a sudden, one guy gets tired, goes down, and pulls down another guy. All of a sudden, they're pulling themselves all in, and people were screaming like I've never seen people scream like this. And like 70% of the guys quit that day, to the point where the CO had to come down and was like, "We can't have 70 guys quit on the first day. We're never going to get to the end. Are you sure you guys all want to quit?" And like the instructor's like, "Fuck these guys. Like, get rid of them." And like that type of mentality where it's like, You know, high tide rises all boats. Like, if you're going to go, just go to the bottom, get away from it. But like, they hadn't taught, they hadn't given these guys the tools to work with. And I think the problem, and Luke and I have been arguing about education quite often. I've been making jokes about the Common Core, but the thing which is really lacking in our school system right now is we're not teaching people how to be, you know, self-sufficient. Like, we educate, we do all these things, but like, you know, think about you guys that are owning businesses. Did you learn anything in school to help you run your business? Anybody ever tell you about taxes or how to balance a checkbook, or like building relationships, or any of the things that you guys have done in terms of affiliate owners? How many of you guys like went in and you're like, oh, I got this? No, what did you do? You like get out a spreadsheet and you're like, fuck, I think I got to figure this shit out. And I think like that's the problem, is that we're not really educating for what we're doing in a lot of ways. And so, you know, the idea of empowering, and how did you figure out how to run these businesses, or more importantly, how did you figure out how to be successful? Did you get a mentor? Did you have a mentor in school? I don't know, did you guys? Did somebody that you could talk to? Do you guys remember in high school or college, did you guys have a mentor? Like, fuck, to me, that's like, I had 2 older brothers and a dad that were super involved. Like, my brothers, or my middle brother, was like my mentor for everything. I called him on everything. Like, my dad was so involved. It was like, and I remember my dad telling me one time that, you know, I'm successful, so he's successful. And he was like, I'm so proud to see you play football with that name on the back of the jersey, because that's my name too. And when I went to go play football, part of the reason I played the game the way I did was because that name was on the back of my jersey. And I knew that like my dad and my brothers had that same name, and like I wasn't going to let anybody like necessarily push or act in a way. So I mean, there was a reason I got, you know, fucking top 10 dirtiest players and fined like $45,000 in 1 year, because I didn't take shit off anybody. And they always ask me like, why are you pissed? I'm like, fuck, that guy's not going to disrespect me and my name. And that's the way I took things, very personal in that respect. But I think for you guys, and especially when you start looking at, you know, having kids and everything like that, you know, they succeed, I succeed, and that idea, I mean, it kind of strikes me that whenever I talk to, you know, get an opportunity to go out and I talk to people, especially in like, you know, the CrossFit deal, the business, I'm like, you got a mentor or anybody? You ever reached out? Like, who's helping you do this? Nobody, it's just me. And that's a scary fucking thing. Like, that's a scary thing to feel like you're on your own. And in this world of the internet, where now everything is even less, where we have these strange social relationships that are never in person. I mean, what's crazy is how many guys I met on the internet, and now I meet in person, and it's like, you know, it's such a different environment. I mean, the fact that we could see this thing in a webinar, but you guys made the choice to come here is even more cool, because now we get to actually have this talk and this interaction. So,
You got anything else, Lord?
cool.
Listening to you guys, one of the, I guess, seeing all the points and bringing it all together, I guess the big thing I start thinking about is goal setting and helping people, like, actually even like acknowledging, like, does someone even have a goal for themselves, or even know what they want to do in a year, 5 years, or 10 years? And it sort of seems like with all of your points, if those were set into place, all of this would be better executed as leaders. And so just want to get your insight on that, and any points or things that you talk about as far as setting goals to help people as leaders.
Yeah, I think last year I talked about goal setting, didn't I?
Yeah, no,
Yeah, you missed a great show.
Yeah, no, it was. No, I mean,
I made some shit up about goal setting last year.
Actually, Andy's talk, he did a little sketch up on our whiteboard, and it was up until like a week ago. We didn't erase it, and then all of a sudden I went in and I was like, wait a minute, where did Andy's fucking writing go? And it was something I looked at. It was the whole, when the domino. And, yeah.
So here's the thing with the goal setting. And I didn't learn this until I did this way too many times. You got to be careful wanting more for someone than they want for themselves. And I experienced that a lot as an affiliate owner. That's
why I don't own a CrossFit gym.
Yes, I was way more invested in time and effort, and then the people were. So they have to want the goal themselves. Otherwise, at the end of the day, it's going to completely fail. When I talk to kids about goal setting, I talk about kinetic energy and dominoes. They have the ability to flip over 1.5 times their height. So if you start with a domino, I forget the exact math, but everybody knows how big a domino is. I think at the 16th or 17th domino, it's the Empire State Building. At the 35th or 36th, it's Mount Everest. And the point is, if you want to climb Mount Everest, you got to do it a domino at a time, not just go try to sprint up Mount Everest. And to tie that back into the community I came from, The first day of Buds, like I said, 200 guys. Oh yeah, I'm going to be a SEAL. I've wanted to be a SEAL forever. And then they're not there at the end of training. Not because of a physical deficiency of any kind whatsoever. I personally believe it's because of how they approach their goals. If you look at a goal, let's say Buds. Buds is only 6 months. Let's say you look at you want to be a doctor. That's like 18 years of school. If you look at that as an 18-year challenge, you are screwed. If you look at Buds as a 6-month challenge, you are absolutely screwed. Most guys, the greatest success I've seen and what I used when I went through, I just wanted to see the sun go down every day. Took it one day at a time. And then 180 days later, boom, there you are. The training's over. And then there's Hell Week, where they keep you up for a week, but they feed you every 6 hours. So it's just like, hey, I just want to make it to the next time I eat. The next thing you know, it's 12 hours have gone through, then 18, and then 24, and and 24 meals later, whatever it is, you're done. So if you want to have people or help them be successful in their goals, you got to chunk it into something that's digestible. What I've found for most people is you got to start off super slow and then just at least get their momentum going in pieces that are so small that they can tackle and start to see the benefit of it, and then the dominoes can start falling over. But that's my advice is talk to people about how they approach their goal. If you're 100 pounds overweight and you think you're going to lose that in a month, you're going to fail. Probably took you 2 years to get there. It's probably going to take you a year and a half to get it off. But if you don't have that conversation and they don't know that coming in, then your odds of and likelihood of success, in my mind, are lower. But just be cautious wanting it more than they do, because it'll drive you insane and you'll brush your teeth with a pistol. And maybe not that part, but...
No, I mean, the goal setting thing is real interesting. I think you have to have like both the long game and the short game. So what do I want to accomplish today? What do I want to accomplish in farther down the road? And I think the idea, and like people ask me like, what's the goal for power athlete? And I always joke it's world domination. So that's my long-term goal. It's not my goal today. What is my goal in terms of today was, creating relationships and allowing those relationships to be able to flourish, and then constantly working with those relationships, because I find that's what I really do. The idea of like bringing people together and creating ideas and being able to go out and push those things are really my immediate goals. And hopefully all of that gets to where I need to go, but you never lose sight of it. And, the idea, especially you think of, Andy's analogy on the dominoes is so accurate. I never thought about playing in the NFL. It was never even something on my radar. I didn't know anybody. I didn't really watch it. It didn't seem like a real deal. I just was stoked that I got a letter from these colleges that offered me scholarships. So I got like 100 scholarship offers, and I took 5 trips. And I remember I was explaining to my dad. My dad's like, so wait a minute. You're going to go to school and play football, and they're going to pay for all your school? I was like, yeah. He's like, sounds pretty good. Like, that's a great opportunity. How many people don't have debt? And I didn't have and my dad paid for my brother's schools. My dad's like, this is amazing. Like, don't waste this opportunity. So I go to Berkeley, and I remember I just wanted to play because I had met this guy who was former dean of the law school, and they had a scholarship to go to Bolt Hall, which is the law school at Cal, but it was for a 4-year letterman. So my goal was, I'm going to be a 4-year letterman so I can get this scholarship, and then I can pay for law school. And that was all my goal was. And then it just so happened, I was like, well, all of a sudden I started. And then I started playing against guys, and I have this weird thing where I don't like to lose. Like I said, that thing on the name on the back of the jersey. And all of a sudden, I'm playing against guys, and then I watch these guys go get drafted in the first round, like top 10 picks, and I'm like, that dude didn't beat my ass that bad. And then the next year I played against another guy, and he got dropped top 10 pick, and I beat that dude's ass. And all of a sudden, these little pieces started going in, and then I get drafted, and then I go in and I start as a rookie. And to me, like, there was never a point where I was like the 5 or 7-year-old little kid and tell my mommy I want to play football. I just really wanted to, I didn't even know. I didn't even think that far ahead. But I think the problem is that when things look too insurmountable, I think you get overwhelmed and you can't do it. So you got to look at those small little pieces and try to get where you're going. And I think at the end of the day, too, like Andy said, the best people, people that are successful are used to failing, and they're not afraid to fail. And people always ask me, like, what's your backup plan? Like, I don't have a backup plan. This is it. And
you bring up an interesting point. So in my Buds class, we had an Olympic swimmer, we had an Olympic level triathlete, we had some crazy long distance runners, and almost all of them were the first people to quit. because they experienced failure for the first time in training, because they were so good at what they specialized in that they had never brushed up against the boundaries of what failure felt like, and it crushed them.
Andy, I'm going to jump in because this is my question, and I'm selfish. Do you have a tactful
No, you
way?
would not make it through buds.
No, I know. Trust me. I've seen the movies. I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Do you have like you said, reps at leadership, getting reps, get in the saddle, take the time. Do you have a tactful way to expose someone you're either mentoring or subordinate to failure, so you can help them kind of channel that failure loop? Not to steal your thunder text, but just like, what are your tactics to expose someone like that, knowing like, hey, this guy's had everything. It's been easy. They haven't experienced failure. Not, I guess, set them up to fail, but have a plan to channel it, right?
Well,
Belittlement.
Well, that's excellent.
And is that like the probationary period, or the buds, like losing the concept of the self that we kind of talked about? Or
But you don't know anything at the end of buds. You know how to do flutter kicks until you have hip flexor problems. Is about it. Overwhelming junior officers is one of the easiest things to do because they're in a super competitive environment. Everybody has an ego, whether you want to talk about it or not. They don't want to fail in front of their peers, and they're the least experienced, so they're even more concerned about failure. So what I used to do to those guys, it's easy. I would just overload them with completely useless information. And we put them in leadership positions. The military is a rank-based organization. If you are an officer, guess what? You're in charge of the dudes, the 4 guys that are in your element that have been in the Navy for 10 years each. That is the way that it works. Those guys have to earn their respect. So what I would do when I was training guys is you wait, it's hard to overwhelm them when nothing is going on, but it's really easy to do when the information starts coming in. So I'd wait until they were in a moderately complex maneuver in a gunfight. Maybe they're moving from building to building, and I just start asking them stupid questions. Hey, what are you doing? How many guys you have? What's he doing over there? Have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? And what happens when they haven't come to the realization that all information is useful, but not all information carries the same amount of energy, like it's all good to have, but not all of it is critical, is that I can distract them from their job because they're trying to answer my BS questions, and then they fail at their job. Then you explain to them like, hey, dude, you're focusing on the wrong stuff. You got emotionally attached to this. You need to prioritize the information that's coming into you and disregard the shit that doesn't matter. And I introduce that failure, and that's just an example of, hey, this is why you need to prioritize information coming in. I highlight that by giving them too much information to the point that they fail in a training environment, not a real environment.
Oh, thank God.
Yeah. Having said that, so let's say you get a guy who's been at the team for 18 months, and workup is 18 months. Guess who's in charge when you go overseas and the bullets are lead instead of rubber? That guy is still in charge. So what do? We create training environments that try to exceed the demands of the real world, and we force people to fail over and over and over again until they get better and better and better and better, and then we go harder and harder and harder and harder. I have been through training scenarios that are way harder than any combat environment that I've ever been in, whether it be in duration or temperature or physical exertion. But you have to facilitate that environment. If you're in a mentor, you know the person, because the question you asked me is very broad. So I guess
let me rephrase it as a mentor or leader specifically.
In what field? Like, what are we talking about?
Let's just say business, right? So you have subordinates.
What a narrow category. Thank you.
Okay, how about we're all developing widgets. So we are all, and I'm assuming some of us are developing young coaches, right? And as a leader, is it your responsibility to set your developing coaches up for failure? Like, should you have a strategy?
You don't have to push them to failure, I think, in that environment. You need to push them to where their boundaries are, and especially if they're training other people, pull them back right before they get to that boundary. Don't hurt somebody else at their expense. Let them go down the wrong path, maybe put a foot on it, and then pull them back and explain the mistake that they were about to make. Because the most powerful thing you can impart on them is the information. Same thing as the people that I was working with. We would let our guys go to failure because that's a different instance. And I needed to let the leaders see the impact on their men. They had to see what happened when they failed as a leader. Paying clients and training people in an environment that doesn't have those consequences, don't let it go that far, but use the same theory. Challenge them in their programming. Like, if you have a young trainer, be like, hey, why are you going to do it like this? Do it like this. Do it like that. I would probably set them up with some bad examples. pair some stuff that shouldn't go together to see if they recognize that it's not a good pairing. And if they don't, stop them. Not in front of the client, obviously, but stop them before they go down that road. That's how they find their boundaries. That's the role of the mentor, right? You still got to put them in the pool, but you're sitting there as a lifeguard.
All the way over there. Shit.
Use your fitness.
I'm Matt Conning. Andy, what is your Fran time?
What? I've never heard a more useless question.
There was a day where Andy would have fucking laced it off in a heartbeat.
We have, I mean,
Dude, so
weights here?
So Andy and I used to do this training deal where I would drive up and he would drive down, and we come up with these training things, and then we got to select. And Andy would be like, "All right, we're gonna do, 50 back squats at 225, followed by a 5K."
Because that's how I win.
Yeah. So like, I would like blow this thing out, and then all of a sudden we're out there running like 3 miles, and he's like running by, like giving me the finger, and I'm
He
like,
does 50 in one set, and I'm like sets of 2, but I'll catch you on the run. It's fine.
he's like, "I'll get you, motherfucker."
How do you combat inaction?
How do I combat inaction? You mean like somebody freezing, or what are you talking about?
Yeah, you talked about somebody freezing before, and somebody kind of brought it up over there. The second question was then how do you validate decisions? So the first one is how do you combat not making a decision, and then how do you validate that those decisions that you made were good? You talked about branch model before.
So day one in training in Buds, we start with a lesson that in the absence of leadership, step up and take charge. Doesn't mean you're the boss, but it means if nobody is making a decision and one needs to be made, make a decision to build momentum. And so like I was telling you, the guy that I fired, I worked with that guy as much as possible, and he outranked me. I had been in the Navy longer than him. I had seen a lot more combat than that guy, but he was in charge. And it wasn't the first time that he had froze. And what I had done in situations previously is I would recognize it coming, and I would make a call in the gap so we could keep moving. And then I would back off so he could regain some space and he could get his head about him again. It got to the point where he wasn't going to make a call. And if that's happening, if you look at yourself as a leader and you always have in your head, what am I going to do if, like I was talking about, my responsibility walking in that patrol, I shouldn't be the only person thinking like that. Because what if I get killed? That's a problem. Every single person out there, if you think like a leader, you're constantly thinking like that. Well, I'm looking at the terrain here. I see it coming. If this happens, I'm going to do that. So you're proactively thinking, maybe, what if the first round out smokes your officer right in the head and he's done? You going to stay on the X? No. Who's going to make the call? The first person who can possibly get it out of their mouth. That's how we train our leaders. And here's how we practice that in training. We'll go right up to a critical decision-making point, and then we pull the officer out, and we watch what happens. And the first time we do it, nothing happens. They freeze. And we stop the training evolution. We're like, dude, you guys all just got killed. Why? Because the guy you were expecting to make the call didn't do anything, and you all sat there like a bump on a log. It's amazing what happens once you do that 3 or 4 times. And eventually it gets to the point, it doesn't even matter if the guy, if you can pull him out if you want to, they recognize it immediately and somebody else makes a call. So that's how you combat inaction. You teach your people that in the absence of leadership, make a call. If you own an affiliate and you're a boss and a situation presents itself while you're not there and they need to make a decision, they need to feel like they can make that decision. You're still the boss. Then they need to run it by you, but they need to be able to make it in that moment so everything else can continue. So for a second, they're the boss, and then they step back and you take over again. It has to be trained. In the absence of leadership, step up and make a call. From day one. Doesn't matter what your rank is, because you have to get off the X.
We had one more over here.
If, in your experience, when you take over for poor leadership and you have somebody that was creating chaos before, and you have a team where obviously the chaos is thriving, what steps or what things would you do to, obviously leading by example, but outside of that, what would you do to change the environment and dynamic?
So you nailed it on the head with the first one. Set the example. Taking over for a bad leader, it's a problem that I have found writes itself very quickly, because again, you could recognize bad leadership like from 10 miles away, like, oh my God, that's a train wreck. So it'll be a breath of fresh air when you get in and you're taking over for that person. I'm not against sitting the group down and be like, hey, start at the bedrock level. Actually, that's what I would do. I would start at the bedrock level and I would explain to them the why. How you view what your position is and how you see their individual actions on the impact of the team. Because that, at the end of the day, is important. And then you have to live and set the example every single day. But I would just do a Control-Alt-Delete for those of you old enough to remember what that is. No, because it's 2016 and you should be using a Macintosh, but that's a different story. It is. It's called a Mac. It's called a Mac. It was just short for Macintosh, but I hate you, Luke. Be open and honest. I mean, one of the biggest things about leadership, I never hid failure from the guys. And one of the best things you can do as a leader is solicit input from your people. So if you had a guy who was crazy out of control, crazy micromanaging, that didn't want to hear any input from the people, sit him down and talk to him. Be like, hey, what do you guys think? Be honest. I'm the new person on the block here. I'm coming into this. I am inheriting this situation. Bring me up to speed. What do you think's going on? Where can we do better? That gets their buy-in. That's explaining to them the why and how their opinion is valued, how their actions are valued. That's the key. Fortunately, if you're stepping into a position where a bad leader was there, I find that to be a lot easier to clean up than coming in after a leader who was awesome and having to fill those shoes.
I'm sure both of you have dealt with this, but have you guys had a situation where you've had to relieve a leader from the team, but you still need them to be productive for the team and still have a role?
That's not how the theory of relieving a leader works.
Well, like John, like if you've had, a guy who thought he was a leader or was appointed a captain and it wasn't working out, but you still needed that player to still be a part of the team, but he's just no longer in a leadership role. Have you guys had that situation, and what have you had to do?
In my experience, like if you're relieved, you're gone. Like your trident's pulled, you're done for the day.
Yeah, for us it was, I always think playing the NFL, like everybody was a professional. You're getting a paycheck. You're expected to do your job, and everything that you do has to be representative of that. The problem is that that's a unique mindset, not necessarily a general mindset. So I think for a lot of young guys, especially the teams that are super successful, have what's called veteran leadership, where all of a sudden have veteran leadership where these guys are, this is how it's done. And I was super fortunate to play on a team like the Eagles where we had all this success and we had some really good veteran leadership. And then I got a chance to play on the Chiefs that had really good veterans but terrible leadership. Part of it had to do with Dick Vermeil crying all the time, which was kind of weird because he would get welt up, like cried, but he never saw a tear. So when you see somebody get welt up and you don't really see a tear, after a while you start thinking it's disingenuous. But like there was a weird, and then with that, but then I got a chance to go play at the Patriots. And by far the best organization that I got to play at, even though I only got to play there a short time, was because nobody had to be told what their job or their role was. Bill Belichick was in charge like a tyrant. And if you saw him coming, you probably either need to make a right or a left or just like keep walking and don't say anything. And if he doesn't say anything to you, you're probably better off than him being like, hey, can I speak to you for a second? You're like, oh, fuck, now what? Because I watched him cut a guy like that. He literally walked by and was like, turned around and was like, hey, can I see you? And the guy was like, yeah, sure, I was going to meals. He's like, no, come into my office. He cut the dude right there. I mean, that type of, and I almost thought that he cut the guy just as a message to all you other guys. And like he did that. Like the one guy was in contract disputes. What did he do? He traded him to Cincinnati or Cleveland. Like talk about having to go from the Patriots to Cleveland. Fuck.
Paris to the Midwest.
Yeah, I would just drive home. But that type of situation where those guys were so steeped in winning that Tom Brady and these guys, they win games. You go there to get a ring. And at that point in my career, I just wanted to win a Super Bowl. And I ended up getting hurt and never getting a chance to really get to that position with them. But to me, like that's the type of deal. I don't need anybody to hold my hand. I don't need a pat on the back. I don't need this whole rah-rah bullshit. I just want everybody to go out and do their job so that we have a clear, defined mission to win as many football games as we can and fucking accomplish the goal. And I think the problem is you know, people get very selfish in their own little piece. Like, this is who I am, this is what I do, instead of realizing that in a team environment, the goal of the team is to win. I don't give a shit about you wanting to go to the Pro Bowl or the fact that, you know, this or this. It's like, we have a mission and you have to fit within that. And I think, at least for me, like, I always looked at, like, you know, playing on a team is way better. I like having a team. I like working with a team of really capable, smart, you know, people like Harry and Luke and
Good looking.
This fucking beard thing.
What's wrong with it?
It's weird.
What's wrong? Can you see it?
Yeah. But you know, you put those situations together, and I think for you guys, especially as affiliate owners and in your jobs, you have to look for people that maybe have a skill set that you don't. Like, that's something I always think about in business, that if everybody is like you, you're going to be fucked. Like, you know, and I'm sure Andy and the similar deal in the SEAL teams, they're not looking for carbon copies of each other. You need one guy that's this guy, and you need people that play different positions. Like, somebody's quarterback. I don't get to be quarterback, but I get to lead by example by what I do. I'm not the center, you know, and it's like, you kind of go through, and I think in business it's the same deal. You look for people that fill the position that you need. You know, if you know, you need a guy to talk about branding and designs and, like, really geek out on that, I mean, Harry's, for me, is that guy, and we have this interesting relationship with that, because that's how he thinks, and it's like, I don't want everybody that thinks like me. And I think the problem is when you guys get stuck in, especially running your affiliates and different you know, business, you just start looking to hire people that are like you because they're easy to get along with. You know, I'm sure you've met people that are, like, so on your radar, you're like, I could hang out with this dude all day. But that might not be, especially if you guys are running a really big CrossFit gym, you got like 100, 200, 300 people. I mean, think about how many different personalities and cross sections of different people you have in that. And if all the coaches are the same, and you got, you know, the DI drill instructor, and everybody's an asshole, you know, there's going to be a lot of people in there that need a lot of hand holding. So you almost need, like, the hand holder, the person, and you kind of start assembling a team of people. And I think at the end of the day, as long as when you bring people in, you make it very clear that's like, you can't be thin-skinned. I mean, if you're going to get butthurt and any little thing, or I might not be able to do things in the most tactful way, then you should probably just leave now. And I think as long as that's kind of like the one where people go, you know, don't be upset if this offends you. Anybody ever said that to you? What's the next thing that comes out of their mouth?
But your beard doesn't look really.
Yeah, they offend the shit out of you, and you're like, wait a minute, just because you said, hey, don't let this offend you, doesn't mean I'm not offended. But
my favorite is, with all due respect, you're like, oh, bitchin', this is going to be good.
Yeah, this might sound a little awkward, and you're like, because it is awkward? But I like, that was the one thing, and so what was interesting for me is coming from an environment like playing football, where there was a clear defined mission, and you assumed everybody's there, but a lot of people didn't do what they were supposed to do, and were there just for given talent. Those guys got out of there pretty quick. Going in and all of a sudden transitioning into like a CrossFit situation, where now I got to deal with customer service. And somebody's like, I can't work out today, I got hurt. I'm like, really, what's wrong? Did you break your leg? Did your arm get ripped off? No, I like, you know, dropped a weight on my toe and it kind of hurts, I can't work out. Why, what does injury mean to you? Well, I broke my leg clean in half, and they cast me 5 days. 3 weeks later, I played, and I played 17 weeks on a broken leg, because they told me that bone wasn't important for football. So that's an injury to me. Oh no, my toe just hurts. So like, what was weird for me was having this perception of like pain and training, and like really kind of doing that. I mean, it's kind of like perception of designing meals. I had a food company, and the reason we didn't do so well is I was like, yeah, who doesn't want a bar with 1,000 calories? And I remember, and the funny part was like, my brothers, I said to Andy's like, these things are amazing. I could have 3 of them a day. And I'm like, yeah, they're great. And then people were like, we don't want a 1,000-calorie bar. And I'm like, why not? It's huge. You know, people are like, I don't need 1,000 calories.
It's like a Subway footlong.
Yeah, it was some fucking amazing bars. So, I mean, like, that type of perception is reality. But I think, and for those of you guys, like, you know, Chad's, you know, got has really found a killer niche in what he's doing with the Athlete Factory, is being able to go in and find, like, I got the one guy that's really good with the parents, the other guy's really good with the kids, this guy's really good on, like, technique and mobility, and you start kind of amassing a team of people that really fit in with the stuff. Like, I'm sure for Andy's deal, you know, this guy's, you know, I mean, and you guys do it. You got an EOD guy, you got a sniper, you got all these different people that fit different roles.
Well, the biggest thing, though, is if you're a leader and you can get your ego out of the way, you staff your weaknesses. Yeah, leaders surround themselves with people that are smarter than them, because they make them look really good. And then you give them all the credit anyway. It's a win-win situation. Here's something for you guys to think of, too. Show of hands again real fast, affiliate or business owners of any kind. Okay, could all of you give me the names of 3 people you're teaching to do your job? Could any of you? If you can give me those names, then you're doing a good job as a leader and a mentor. If you're not thinking like that, constantly training your replacement, you are limiting not only yourself but your business. Just as food for thought. In the SEAL teams, I constantly was training my replacement all the time because they're going to be my replacement at some point. And if something happens and I'm not there, those are the people that'll make the decisions.
Amen.
Last question.
Oh, no pressure.
Is it a good one?
This better be good.
Just kidding. Okay, this might not be. All right, well, you're up.
Is it a terrible question, like footwear, hairstyles?
No, it's about followership. So we talk a lot about
followership?
Hey, you're freaking me out here. Where are you going with this?
Oh, no. So it's a terrible question.
No, go.
Whoa. Stand up.
So you talk a lot about soliciting input from your subordinates, and everybody kind of gets a vote, but at the end of the day, it's not really a democracy, especially in the military. So, you have to make a decision, but so not everybody can be the leader, and you have to have cooperative people to help you as a leader, and you can't put the onus on them. I understand that, but your leadership is partly successful because you are followed by good followers. What are your thoughts on followership and how being a good follower is kind of a cyclic progression with being a good leader?
To be a good leader, you have to be a good follower. To be a good teacher, you need to learn. You need to be a student. It goes both ways. Because regardless of the position that you're in, hopefully you have a mentor too, that you're learning from them. So you're following somebody else's, like I said, the books that I had of the practices that I saw in other people. I was following them and then trying to impart them down. I mean, it's a tenuous balance, but like you said, what you cannot do is have a room full of people who all think that they're in charge. You can all think like you're a leader, but you need to have somebody who's in charge. And you can make a collaborative decision together, which is why it's so important that when your team succeeds, they get the credit and not you. That's how you really facilitate the healthy followership. If your team helps you to be successful and you're like, yes, we succeeded because of me, and you shit on them, that's the most insidious environment that you can get into. They have to understand yes, you're not in charge right now, but you will be one day. So let's treat it like that. So we're going to collaborate, but then beyond a certain point, I am in charge. Those things just have to be clear.
How many guys actually like playing on a team? Like if you were given the opportunity to be like in your business or whatever it looks like I really like teams. I mean, that's super interesting for me because I used to run into guys all the time that didn't like a team environment. Like for me, as an offensive lineman, we work in this little micro team within the team, and we are by far the most forever. I mean, the offensive lines are very, very different in that we do everything together. Like we went to dinner every Monday night. We went to each other's birthday parties, families. I mean, my buddy Runyon has a baby. I mean, I drove him to the hospital. Like that type of stuff. Like I would go over and babysit his kids. I mean, like that type of team environment because I grew up like that. I grew up with brothers. Like there was never a point at which I did not know what team I played on. And like when I got to go play football, it was like, yeah. And even though I might not like my brother for whatever reason, and I really didn't like one of the guys I played next to, I had enough of a team environment to be like, I don't like who you are as a person. I don't like anything about your fucking program. But we have this mission and this job that we're going to do so that we can both be successful. And I'm not going to let my personal feelings about anything get in the way of that. And for me, as you guys might have guessed, I'm kind of honest with that stuff. Like if I don't like you, I'm like, I just don't really like you. And I played with a guy, Trey Thomas, and Trey, we were cool and for whatever reason, but he did not want to study and he didn't want to learn his assignments and he didn't take it as detailed as I did. And I remember being like, you motherfucker. And I was like, but it's not going to stop me. So what did I do? And I knew he wasn't going to do it, I just learned all his stuff. So every time he'd walk out the huddle, he'd be like, John, let's play. Fucking 4 years, this dude made 5 times what I made. And I told this dude on every play what to do. And I never failed him because that's the team environment I play on. And for us especially, we look at it the same way. Like like there might be a specific leader in one point, but I think everybody on the team, at least in a good team environment, everybody has a chance to lead in some way. Like this is what you are in charge in. Let's say there's 7 faucets of the business. This is what you are in charge with. You are tasked. This is what you lead. This is where you are. And
That's
I think
the decentralized command I was
yeah.
telling you guys about, keeping
Yeah.
your head up and out while your people are doing their jobs. Like, how many of you guys think that all SEALs like each other? I can't stand some of the people I had to work with. We have got every problem. Like, it's not, people look like, oh, you guys are unique. You're just like unicorns in grass fields and everything's perfect. I mean, we're getting in fist fights on the berm. I can't stand half the people that I worked with, but we put all that shit aside for the benefit of what we were trying to do.
Yeah. Which is just like any situation. I mean, those you guys that have brothers and sisters, I'm sure there's certain points where you're like, I would set that motherfucker on fire. But at the end of the day, if there was a situation where like you were at a bar or somewhere out and somebody was rude to your brother, you're like, dude, I would drop a fucking drink in his heartbeat to like light this dude up. And like that's the mentality, I think, at least for, you know, when I look at business or really developing, like that was a big question for us. Like, did you ever play on a team? Did you like playing on a team? Do you look at a good team environment? And if somebody's like, nah, I've never played any team sports and only child, I don't really like teams, I'm a solo on this, I'm like, great, you should go be a writer somewhere. You probably won't be able to play on our situation because at least what we do, you know, teaching seminars, and you can ask Callie a little bit about this. We were sitting on an airplane and she had, what was the book you were reading that day about, toughness training for life. And she actually was like, I think working on our seminar staff was part of that deal. Because you got to fly into a situation and you got maybe anywhere from 15 to 50 people that you have to walk in and deliver 16 hours of very, very detailed content to a whole bunch of people you've never met. And not only do you have to be able to go in there, and Andy actually worked on the level 1s for a number of years, so he knows what I'm talking about. You travel all over the globe. You got to show up and you got to be on, regardless. And you got to go out and captivate and be able to, you know, provide an opportunity to present information, but also do it in a way that's both fun and exciting, because it's boring listening to somebody talk for fucking 2 days. And I think like that for us was really good in terms of that building that team environment. So I think in business and all the business development and all the kind of the mentors and everything that I've ever read and been associated with in terms of like how to become a leader, a big thing they talked about was like establishing a team and making sure everybody on that team knows exactly what their role is, and being able to say, this is what I need from you, and then being very, very, you know, specific about it. And then once they're there, just being like, go. And for me, I don't micromanage. I will gladly let you fail. And it's just how it works. And I think, you know, in just about anything in terms of like mentorship and business, and that idea of like, for me, if it's a team, we all succeed. If we fail, we all fail. And I hate people that point fingers. So, yeah, followership. And you know what, and also as a leader, it's kind of nice when somebody takes the lead. You're like, fuck, thank God. I'm getting tired on stuff. Or you don't know everything. I mean, you can ask Luke, like, you know, at least 3 times a day. I'm like, no idea. What do you think? Oh, that's a terrible idea. Let's do this. But I mean,
I usually say, I don't know either. Yeah. Let's go watch a movie.
Let's go get drinks. And
One of the most rewarding things, though, like I was telling you guys on that deployment where I was an officer, my last one, was seeing guys that I had put through training, showed up at a team, 0 experience whatsoever. By the end of that, stepping up and making the right decision because they felt empowered to do so. Probably the single most rewarding thing in my career was seeing that mentorship expressed in their decision making. But you got to empower them to do it.
Yeah, that's parenting.
Over a longer,
there you go,
more
people.
Painful
cool
timeline.
Anything else? That's it? We're good?
Well, here's the deal. Let's give these guys a round of applause for Andy.